Let's hear from our chairman, Mr. Ernesto Ordonez, for the introduction of speaker.
Okay, can you hear me? Vivian, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. I'm here at the EDSA monument commemorating the revolution of Ninoy Aquino. And I'd like to say that we're honored on this important day. We have a very important topic and a very important person. The important topic is Moringa. It's like a miracle thing, and it'll help the poor, it can give jobs, etc. So it's fantastic, right? And as you may have seen, today we're going to talk about Moringa, its benefits, its history, what the group that the speaker has done so far, and what he can do, and what you can do, right? That's the most important thing, what you can do, because as our departed chair said, our job here in this foundation is not just to talk, but to take action on the speakers. And our speaker is fantastic. His name is Vicente Carlos Serrano. They call him CJ for short. He has one hell of fantastic background. Okay. Basically, he's the chief operating officer of Third Plate Farms. Over 4 years of experience, so he looks younger than that. He knows everything from training to restaurant to farming to farm management. He's a co-founder of something. It shows his heart, right? His heart. He's a co-founder of Trails to Empower Kids, going to kids in places distant and nearly inaccessible locations, giving them school supplies. His heart is for the poor, right? So it's for the kids. He's a graduate of that school called La Salle Benilde, which is, frankly, the school that has the highest hiring rates. But instead of being hired, he's gone on his own. He's helping people. He's helping Moringa and all that. It is my great pleasure to introduce him to you. And I told him the following. Number one, he must give his phone number. So we found that from before, when the young people took over, because when I took over, everyone was over 60 years old, right? The whole board is under 45. Well, the whole board except one, right? And the whole thing's changed. We have now 4,100. So for all of you listening around the world, he will give you his phone number, though it's already in the uh, it's in the PowerPoint presentation. He'll verbally say it, so all you people around the world get your pens. Then he'll give you 5 to 10 minutes of his life. What did a good, handsome guy like this go and take a risk instead of joining a corporation? He's doing these things for the poor, etc. No, galing, no. Okay, 5 to 10 about his personal life, how he got it. So hopefully, we want you to have personal connection, not just his vision, but himself. Then after that, he'll give his talk. But in his talk, I told him he's not talking to students. All right, he's talking to people in business who want our poverty reduction through technology like Moringa. So he's got to tell us how we can do something after he talks. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to appeal my run away from the ceremonies. Maingay doon. I'd like to say we have here Vicente Carlos Serrano. CJ, take it away.
Oh, good morning, everyone.
Take it away. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thanks. That was an extremely flattering introduction. I hope you don't mind me wearing the headphones so I can hear everyone's questions if you have any. And I hope I'm coming out clear to everyone as well. I just wanted to, well, I'm thankful. My gratitude is towards you guys for giving me a platform to be able to share my advocacy with everyone here, where Moringa is something that a lot of us Filipinos have essentially taken for granted, but who would have known that it's something that can help alleviate poverty, can help with malnutrition, and at the same time be something that's actually easy to grow, easy to proliferate, easy to propagate. Uh, Vivian, do you have the presentation? Do I begin? Well, fine. I'll give you a brief background of myself. My name is CJ Serrano. You just call me CJ. It's short for Carl's Jr. It was named essentially after a burger joint. um, I was raised in the Middle East in the United Arab Emirates. I came home for college because I didn't want to take up a student. I didn't want to take up a student loan in the U.S. And upon getting here, I was fortunate enough to get an athletic scholarship with a university, College of St. Benilde, and fell in love with my own country ever since. So I stayed ever since and just went off to work for a couple of years. Stayed in the corporate world for the better part of 20 years. And after my last corporate employment, which was with Smartmatic, I realized that my life was just not worth the death threats that I was getting there and left it. So I started, with the windfall I got from that, I started my own farm. And from farming since 2016, I was called in to work with Third Plate Farms. It's an affiliate of Pasudeco, Pampanga Sugar Development Company Corporation. It's the sugar mill. If anyone is familiar with going to Subic, you'll see the big mill with a giant chimney on the way. That's them. That's Pasudeco. They took me in order to convert all the lands that used to be for sugarcane to use it for projects that are focused on environmental sustainability and agriculture. So some of the land I'm turning into solar power stations. The majority of the land we're utilizing into organic agriculture. One of the primary crops that we have is moringa. Moringa, as you may know, let me start. I can start my presentation now. If Vivian, can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Okay, Moringa. I call it the unknown superfood and its potential. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just what we're going to go through. I'm going to breeze through this. The reason I want to breeze through this presentation I have with this PowerPoint is in order to be able to field more questions from you guys. If you have, I'm sure many of you guys are curious as to, excuse me, what we may do with Moringaling Philippines Foundation Incorporated in order to help with your concerns as well as help alleviate poverty and nutrition in the Philippines. So we'll be going through, I'll give you a brief background on the benefits of Moringa. Our foundation, Moringaling Philippines Foundation Incorporated, this is founded by Bernie Arellano. I'll get more into that later. The accomplishments we've done so far, the challenges that we've been facing, our targets, hopefully in the near future, but in some cases will be long term. And finally, of course, we'll go through a brief takeaway and some Q&A. This is where I want to devote a bulk of my time with the Q&A because I hope to be able to answer your queries, whatever they may be, related to Moringa, I hope. Next slide, please. Vivian? Oh, there. So why Moringa? Okay. First, we need to know what is Moringa. I mean, obviously, most of the Filipinos here would know what Moringa is, or malunggay, what we call it, or kamunggay, as they would call it in the South. In the Visayas region, they call it kamunggay. We mostly call it malunggay. It's something that most of us, as growing up, were told by our mothers, "Oy, labas ka." You go out, get a bit of malunggay from our neighbors, which we'll then cook into soup or stew or some other steamed ingredient into a vegetable stir fry of sorts. Uh, it's commonly called malunggay. The one that we have here, endemic in the Philippines, is called Moringa oleifera. It is the most popular and the most nutritious of the 14 species of genus of Moringa throughout the world. I'm not familiar with I don't remember from the top of my head the variants. One that I'm familiar with is PKM1, which originated from India. But what we have here in the Philippines is called Moringa oleifera. This is also the most nutritious and highest antioxidant of all the moringa breeds, and surprisingly, of all vegetables. This was a study that was already done by UP Los Baños, and they compared all the other vegetables, all the other fruits, and by far, moringa, pound for pound, comes out as the most nutritious of all of them. In some places, it's actually known as the miracle tree because its leaves, the pods, the stems, the bark, the seeds, the fruits, and the roots all have important industrial, pharmaceutical, and food applications. There's literally no waste in this tree. And if you keep the tree standing as it lives, because it is a legume, it actually even enriches the soil. That's how good it is. It enriches the soil by inserting nitrogen back into the soil, which is something that is uh, very useful for other plants that grow around it. It's a very fast growing tree. Matter of fact, if you plant one today, February, March, April, May. In about 9 months, you will have a fully grown tree already that's ready for harvest. 9 months to a year, depending on the weather. Because of climate change, it's become a little bit more unpredictable. Uh, and it's actually one of the trees that's included in the climate change resilient crops because it is such a hardy tree. In some places in Africa, it's actually known as the no dead tree because it essentially does not die. Even if it, we had firsthand experience in our farms where after a storm, a moringa tree would topple over, be uprooted, simply putting it back in the ground, and it will thrive and survive again. Um, but it preferably, if you are going to get into moringa growing, it prefers soil that is well drained. It loves water, but it doesn't want to be in stagnating water. It doesn't want to be soaking in water. So sandy loam soil with a pH range of 5 to 9 is the most advisable if you wish to grow moringa. The next part of this presentation, well, next part about moringa, we'll have to look at something a little dire. I hope it doesn't put off your taste because I'll be talking about the state of malnutrition. Next slide, please, Vivian. Okay, this is the Global Nutrition Report. And unfortunately, this was from 2018, but apparently it still is accurate to this day. This was given out by the World Health Organization. I'll leave those numbers out on screen for you to know, but I'll focus on the Philippines because that's the Philippine situation because that's what I'm more intimately familiar with. Like for example, here in the Philippines, 29,000 children under 5 die every year due to undernutrition. This was a fact stated by Mr. Joris Van Hees. He's the nutrition specialist of UNICEF during the launch of the costing study on undernutrition in the Philippines during 2017 to 2018. And during the last census that was held in 2023, it apparently still stays the same. We lose, unfortunately, sadly, 29,000 children who are under the age of 5 simply because they do not get the proper nutrition. And by malnutrition, this, I'm sure a lot of you already understand this, but it doesn't mean just because a kid looks fat, it means they're well nourished. Even if a child looks healthy, it may mean that they're not getting the right nutrition in order to combat diseases, viruses that can, well, unfortunately lead to the death of some of these children. Our country, Philippines loses about 220 billion pesos per year, which is about 1.5% of our GDP due to malnutrition. This was, again, the conclusion of the UNICEF Commission costing study on undernutrition. The study noted that because of malnutrition, our children are being stunted. Their growth is not, it's not given the full potential. And the stunting doesn't just apply to their growth in height or in size, diagonal width, whatever it is, but it also focuses on the stunting of their brain growth. Uh, the development of the brains of these children does not reach its full potential simply because of undernutrition or malnutrition. Stunting alone contributes to more than 50% of the economic costs of undernutrition. Vivian, next slide, please. Now, we go to Moringa. We go back to Moringa, the most nutritious food in the world. 1991 study done by the British and a more recent study done by the University of Texas based on USDA data show that food grown today is less nutritious than that grown 60 years ago. Now, this is because of soil depletion, artificial fertilizers, and the high yield varieties where they augment crops in order to produce a lot more food, but unfortunately does not produce the same amount of nutrition. The vitamins it produces is not enough. So while artificial fertilizers cause plants to grow bigger and faster, unfortunately, they do nothing to increase the plant's ability to absorb nutrients at a faster rate. So you end up with, for example, a big banana, but that bigger banana will just have the same amount, if not even less, nutritional value than an organically grown natural banana that's grown without the use of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and so on. Um, well, one thing that is one of the reasons why I also try to advocate the growth, the planting of moringa and the growing of them through organic practices, because organic practices, aside from, uh, I'll give you the negatives first. Organic growing of any crop will yield less. Yes, it will yield less. It takes a bit longer to grow, and it will have less yield when it comes to whether it's leaves or it's fruits. It will not produce as much as traditional farming methods wherein you insert artificial fertilizers. But the big benefit of this is that that slow growth actually helps the plant absorb a lot more nutrients into its system, therefore dispersing those nutrients into the leaves or into the fruits that it produces, into the fruits or the vegetables that it produces. Thus, organic farming produces much healthier fruits and vegetables and produce in general as compared to traditional farming. This is something that I keep talking and uh, trying to bring forth when we have our talks with farmers, because as unfortunately most of our farmers, of course, they do their farming because they do it in order to earn, and the only way to earn is to produce more crops, more produce. The difference is with organic farming, the longer you continuously farm in that method, the yield gets better in time, as opposed to if you farm with the traditional methods of using synthetic fertilizers, artificial fertilizers, or pesticides. As you as you use the same plot of soil, the soil eventually degenerates over time because artificial fertilizers essentially burn the nutrients or suck up all of the nutrients out of the soil instead of continuously cycling it and enriching the soil further. So on the long term, organic farming is actually surprisingly more economical, as you don't have to end up spending so much on fertilizers. Traditional farming, on the other hand, as you go along, per cycle of harvest and planting, you actually have to end up using more and more artificial fertilizers and pesticides as you go along, as the soil gets depleted of its own natural nutrients. So, research has also found that a fixed amount of energy and varieties with high yields may not have the same energy to absorb nutrients because, like I said, artificial fertilizers focus on growth rather than on absorption of nutrients. For example, these studies show that onions, onions nowadays, they're produced in massive fields using artificial fertilizers. Studies have already shown that they have 75% less calcium than when they were originally planted, or for those as compared to those variants which are organically grown. Potatoes, 35% less calcium and 45% less iron. Spinach, spinach. Every one of us knows about this growing up watching Popeye on TV. Um, it's supposed to be the original superfood. Most spinach now that you can go in the grocery, if it's not organic, it's been shown to have about 60% less iron than it originally had. So yeah, buying organic is a bit more expensive, but in the long run, it's actually more helpful, and it is more nutritious for you. You're getting a lot more nutrients out of the money that you're spending for whatever vegetable or produce that is. Um, a simple thing again, continuing cabbage. Cabbage has 71% less iron as compared to organic cabbage. Carrots have 75% less magnesium than they did, than those especially that are grown organically. Um, Here on the chart, I'll focus on that. I digress, but as we look here at the chart, one of the reasons why I focused on Moringa is much more pound for pound, as I said earlier, more nutritious than a lot of other produce, fruits, and vegetables that we have. As you can see there, it's 14 times more calcium than milk, pound for pound. It has 4 times more potassium than bananas. It has 9 times more iron than spinach. It has 2 times more protein than yogurt. So 2 times more vitamin A than carrots, and 4 times more fiber than oats. Now, under that, excuse me, uh, Vivian, I hope we'll be able to show the other people, our viewers here. There you go. Aside from nutrients, Moringa also has one of the highest, if not the highest, antioxidants. Um, Anyone here who's familiar with using multivitamins, antioxidants, taking those pills, surprisingly, all you need to do is take Moringa. Whether it be in capsule form or you just get from your plant outside and mix it into your food, it has a lot more um, capabilities in keeping you young, right? Um, oh, excuse me. Hello, can you hear me? Vivian, are you still there? It stopped.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, good. So I can continue. Okay, so there. I mean, on this chart, it's pretty self-explanatory. It has the top antioxidants among all foods, Moringa, 157,000. And this is not my words. This is results according to the ORAC scale. The USDA was the one who gave us this information. Um, it's a way of measuring the ability of antioxidants to absorb damaging free radicals, or ORAC, oxygen radiance absorption capacity test. Okay. Um, you'll see a lot of these antioxidant miracle pills that you'll see mangosteen, you'll see the dried blueberry, and so on. But the simple moringa actually trounces all of it by leaps and bounds, almost double of the nearest of its closest second placer, which is spirulina. Um, but there, as I said, it's a miracle food which surprisingly we all ended up taking for granted. Uh, I myself took moringa for granted and was humbled when I learned about it from foreigners. Um, when I started farming, I was looking on what crop I could plant and earn from. And while doing research, I learned from a couple of Japanese clients of mine now that I mean, they realize that of all fruits and vegetables, moringa has the highest nutritional value. And at the same time, the Filipinos, have the best moringa variant of all. There's the PKM one from India and other breeds from all around the world. Moringa, a brief history again. I digress a bit. Moringa originates from India. It's spread out from India to South America and all over the world. In Africa, um, the biggest producers of moringa in the world is still India. The biggest producer of moringa in the world is still India. But our variant that ended up in our shores, Moringa oleifera, has the highest of all the moringa variants, has the highest nutritional value, has the highest concentration of antioxidants among all of the other moringa plants. That's why I have been an advocate for moringa, Moringa oleifera, the Filipino malunggay, for the longest time. Um, uh, from here, let's go on. Let me introduce to you the group that I am with. It's this Moringaling Philippines Foundation Incorporated. This was founded by Dr. Bernadette Estrella, um, or as some people call Nanay ni Drew. She's essentially the mother of Moringa in the Philippines. She was the one who developed it and made it grow to the scale that it is now. Um, Although we are still trying to grow it, as it still needs a lot of attention, a lot more necessary attention that as it's been taken for granted since we all essentially just grew up with it around us. These are the people behind Moringaling Foundation right now. Um, the, there's myself, Vicente Carlos Serrano Jr. That's me. Just call me CJ, Carlos Jr. I started out in the BPO industry here in the Philippines. Fortunately for me, since I spoke English well, I went up the ranks quickly in our call centers, switched to HR, and from HR, I was hired by Smartmatic, the election machines. I was the one who essentially set it up. And from there, I learned how our politics was in a way petty because by simply not hiring people who were not under who were under certain politicians, I ended up getting death threats. So I didn't think that was worth my time, and so I resigned from there. And from that, I was able to start my own little farm in Batangas. And from my farm in Batangas, I started out. I got called in to work with Third Plate Farms. It's an affiliate of Pasudeco, Pampanga Sugar Development Corporation. Uh, Another one of our esteemed members is Mr. Honorio Tan. He's the chairperson of the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chamber of Commerce. He's also distributed thousands of seedlings in the Boys Town. I don't know if you're familiar with Boys Town, the Manila Boys Town complex. For those unfamiliar with it, it's a residential care center for indigent boys and girls and the elderly, located in Marikina, Metro Manila. They now have thousands of malunggay trees in their lands, uh, donated by Mr. Honorio Tan. And then we have Mrs. Jonito Torrevillas. Uh, those who go to the groceries here, you'll see the M2. It's a moringa or malunggay concentrate drink. She's the founder and owner of that. We have Olan Petisme. He's our expert in our marketing and exporting moringa products. He his primary role in Moringaling Foundation has been sourcing out, sourcing out, sale, marketing Moringa internationally and locally, as we've all been trying to concentrate on. And then we have Gina Matsuoka. She's the founder and owner of JPM, or Japan Philippine Moringa Incorporated. It's one of the biggest producers of Moringa products, which is exported globally. She exports to Japan, Germany, the US. And she's also one of the most instrumental in gaining our certifications, our international certifications. Because as you may know, a lot of countries outside the Philippines uh, do not really recognize our Department of Agriculture certification for organic crops, um, simply because our Department of Agriculture has to step up on their testing and on their testing processes to get the global standards. So, in order to get certification abroad, you need to unfortunately get a third party company that's a certifying body outside of the Philippines in order to get us certified to export crops. Then, of course, we have our current president of Moringaling Foundation, Cookie Cabangon Chua. She is in the middle of further studying the nutritional viability of controlling malnutrition. Uh, our goal is for zero hunger and stunted growth effects. We are aiming to eliminate that with Moringa. Next slide, please, Vivian. Okay. Now, these are some of the accomplishments that we've done so far ever since the founding of MPFI, lobbying the inclusion of Moringa into the feeding program of the Department of Education. Currently, we just finished the third reading in the Senate. We are really pushing for Moringa to be included in the feeding program of the Department of Education. One primary reason for this is, as I showed earlier with the nutritional content of Moringa, there was a study done by the UP Los Baños on a controlled group of children. And half of the children would be getting at least 150 milligrams of Moringa every day for a year. And the other half will just go on with their regular lives without the addition of that extra 150 milligrams of Moringa every day, whether it be in the capsule or in the powder mixed into their food over a span of a year. And after a year, UPLB gave us a result which was astounding because 100% of the children who received Moringa every day for a year were of removed from the malnourished or malnutrition segment, whereas almost 40% of the children who were not in the Moringa program were still malnourished at the end of the year. Uh, our hope is that once Moringa is included in the feeding program of the Department of Education, we can plant trees within these schools, within these public schools, and from that alone, at least get a little bit more Moringa into their diet daily. If not, also to sustain them with malunggay powder, moringa powder, which the school cafeterias can easily mix into practically any of the food that they have. Matter of fact, malunggay has practically no taste. So if you mix it into any soup, into any sauce, it barely makes a difference in the flavor, thus not ruining whatever recipe you have. Ergo, the reason we have malunggay flour that's used in the malunggay pandesal, you barely taste the difference, and yet you get the full benefits of malunggay. Another of our accomplishments is is planting of 1 million Moringa trees by 2030. This is one of our goals. Currently, we're a little bit behind schedule. We've planted approximately slightly over 100,000 trees. Um, the reason being, I'll get to it later, government support. We lack any support. Support from MPFI has been purely from the private sector. Myself, I've invested essentially my life savings into it, as have most of our farmers. Uh, but yes, we are still aiming to finish planting 1 million trees by 2030. If you segregate that, it's just 5 years. So that's only 200,000 trees per year. In a country as big as the Philippines, 200,000 malunggay trees per year is not that hard a feat. Um, a third thing that MPFI does on a regular basis is our multiple speaking and teaching appearances. In this case, I've been honored to speak in front of you guys right now, you esteemed fellows. We try to make as many appearances with government agencies, LGUs, and private groups, whether it be corporations, in order just to raise awareness. That's where we just want to start. We just want to raise awareness and teach the best practices to those who are interested in planting malunggay, at least in the Philippine market. We want to set, and during these talks, we also set expectations if you wish to enter the global markets, which, thanks to Gina, one of the former presidents of MPFI, is a lot easier also. And I'll get into that a bit later. Another one is we received global organic certification with Control Union. Now, Control Union is a third-party certifier based in the Netherlands. It's it's a bit of an expensive option to get certified with Control Union. But the big advantage of getting certified with Control Union is that it's more of a 4-in-1 deal. Because if you're certified with Control Union, you're automatically certified with USDA, Japan, the EU, and the Philippines. So all of these areas recognize certificates, organic certification from Control Union, which means that if you are growing crops that are certified by Control Union, you can easily export to the US, anywhere in Europe, in Japan, and of course, here in the Philippines. You can actually stamp it with certified organic. Now, I will digress again when it comes at this point, because just as an FYI, those who go to the grocery, you go to the organic section, I implore you to look closer at the stamp that says organic. But a majority, unfortunately, of our produces here, on the produce that we have in our groceries, it will just say organic practice. It is not certified organic. There is a world of difference. Organic practice means they are trying to do organic practices in the maintenance, in the growth of the crops and the produce that they have. But it does not mean that they are actually following it. They may still at times, for example, if they end up with an infestation of some sort of insect or plant disease, some of these companies will still use artificial fertilizers or artificial pesticides in order to resuscitate their crops and still be able to harvest it. But it's not organic. So at that point, try to focus more on the stamp, on the product, on the produce that you buy, if it actually says certified organic. If it says certified organic, then it really is. It has been grown organic and it has been tested by third-party certifiers to check that it was organically grown with natural fertilizers, natural pesticides, without using anything synthetic that can end up as poison. Because essentially, that's what synthetic pesticides are. It is poison, and we don't want that. And Control Union, with the help of JPM, has certified over 40 hectares or full organically certified crops of moringa. Over 40 hectares now in the Philippines, and it's growing, albeit slowly, but at least it's growing. Last thing we've done is increase the exposure of moringa on the global market. As I briefly mentioned earlier, we now export to Japan, Germany, and now the US as well. Um, the reason why, even if we are not the biggest producer of moringa in the world, it's because of our quality. For example, as I said earlier, the biggest producer of moringa in the world is India. But Japan and Germany specifically favor going to the Philippines to get their moringa because um, most of the demands for moringa is the leaves. Now, with leaves, an example here would be Japan uses almost 40% of their imported moringa in tea. Now, with tea, if you don't use just the leaves, with the Philippines, our quality control is high enough that when we say we're going to give you leaves, we just give you the leaves. In India, unfortunately, since they've heavily mechanized their harvesting and processing, a lot of times when someone orders leaves from them, a good 15 to 20% of that will still be stems. And unfortunately, if you, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with it, if you boil the leaves of moringa and you drink it as tea or in soup, there's hardly any flavor. But if you boil or cook the stems, it starts to get bitter. And as the Japanese, especially the Japanese, like using moringa in tea, moringa tea, if there is even a bit of stem in that, you can imagine how unsatisfying that cup of tea would be with a bitter aftertaste because of stems. So, fortunately, because of our good quality control here in the Philippines, we are being flocked to by the European countries, Japan and USA, in order to get their moringa. And this is all primarily in thanks to Gina Matsuoka, who started exporting and did all the legwork for us in order to get certified with Control Union. Now,
Excuse me, JC,
yes,
just a moment.
go ahead.
We have 15 minutes left, and could you finish
Mhm.
in 5 minutes so we can get one or two questions
Yes,
before we end the formal session, please? Thank you.
surely.
Go ahead and
Okay,
finish in five
I'll breeze
minutes. Then
through
we
this
call it
quickly.
open
Our
forum.
obstacles. Sure. Okay. Our problem right now is with the government support. Unfortunately, a lot of we need to get the governments in order to support us to proliferate the knowledge of how important moringa is, on how nutritious moringa is. Number two that we need is information drive. It's a two-pronged approach where the government and the private industries can create an information drive where we let more people know exactly what moringa can do for you. Marketing, connecting farmers and processors to buyers. This has been a problem for a lot of small farmers. They do not know who to sell to and end up selling at a loss. And so they move away from moringa. And of course, processing, number four. We need to acquire more processing machinery in order to make the moringa powders, moringa teas, make it more accessible to a wider variety of people. And finally, logistics, consolidating, especially with the small farmers in many areas who don't know how to be able to consolidate all of their crops in order to be able to distribute them to a wider market. Next slide, please. Finally, these are our targets. Uh, we're looking at credit facilitation. This is helping farmers to get more materials for land prep, maintenance, post-harvest processing facilities. Information drive, as I mentioned earlier. Processing plants. We're targeting more processing plants in order to dry the leaves and be able to distribute them without worry of extending the shelf life. And of course, lobbying for tax incentives. Hopefully, this would be able to help farmers, especially small farmers in rural areas, get more uh, incentives to grow malunggay. And finally, carbon sequestration. This is something that I've been focusing on recently because carbon sequestration is another means for small farmers to get revenue from their crops, wherein they can sell carbon credits to buyers in the open market globally. And this is a global market. And finally, our ways, last, second to the last slide, please. Vivian, second to the last slide, please. Quick takeaways. MPFI, Moringaling Philippine Foundation, will continue to give talks and workshops to gain more awareness in the agricultural industry. Again, I'm here. I will give my number in order for you guys to be able to contact us. We'll be more than glad to help. MPFI will develop and construct venues and provide training materials for those who want. Continue in pursuing and communicating with the private industry to expand the avenues of continuous growth. Finally, last slide, please. Thank you very much for listening to me, taking your time. Excuse me. Again, my name is CJ Serrano. There are my contact details on screen, but for those who can't see it, my phone number is 09 well, 060063 908 852 5711. My email addresses are cj at thirdplatefarms.com or cjserrano11 at hotmail.com.